comment in the
Your
first
phone
one
is not working.
about how that's petty or if we go after the little things.
Who was it?
43,000
Oh, are you serious?
fines, court fines so far.
Yeah, all we do.
43,000.
That's what it's, I think
Court has
Chief's one
cases
that said,
190.
something goes wrong, resident, something.
We're not even coming
Okay.
close to
We're
covering
live.
the court costs.
Oh, gosh, no.
Thanks for the heads up.
We just added to
Okay, we are live, welcome to,
So,
Yeah,
are we good to go then? Welcome to our work meeting for Wednesday, April 13th. We will get started with item 1.1, review of this evening's agenda. Any questions or comments about the agenda tonight from staff or? No. I will make note that council members Warren and Henderson are both en route. They will be late, so they will be here. So we'll excuse them for a minute till they get here. So they will arrive. Okay, item 1.2, any future agenda items? I have a note on here, Haram Main Street open space and park strips.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I think Bryce is gonna give you, we opened bids yesterday and we need to get an update so we know how to prepare this for you for the future.
Yeah, so hopefully this is pretty quick, but as Nathan said, we opened bids on this project yesterday and we're just looking for a little bit of direction. We think we kind of have a solution moving forward, but we just wanted to bring this to council. So this project is a park strips and open space project. It will install a trail, landscaping, streetlights along Harriman Main Street across from the auto mall. So you can kind of see it up here. Those neighborhoods, when they came in, would have been on the hook to install that landscaping and streetlights, but at the time, Main Street wasn't built. So at least this section of Main Street wasn't built. So we did collect a fee in lieu for those improvements. In today's dollars, those are different, right? So that fee in lieu price isn't exactly the prices we're seeing in today's construction prices. So the way the project was set up was, okay, we've got an asphalt trail in here, we've got landscaping and streetlights, and obviously that's not the full extent of the landscaping, I just threw in some quick trees for illustration. And then because we knew we were gonna be tight on budget, we broke the project up into two sections. So we call this section the majority of the project base bid, and then the kind of remainder called bid alternate one. So you can see everything else outside of that should be covered by development, but since this has already been developed and we collected a fee in lieu, it's now on us to install the improvements there. So because we knew that our budget was pretty tight on this, we wanted to have some flexibility that we could, if we choose to move forward with a majority of the project, we could move forward with all of the project, or we could say, no, let's try another time for this project. So and a little background, we have received quite a few concerns about the darkness of Main Street at night. Luckily, with some of the commercial improvements that are going on close to 126, those streetlights are being installed. But other than that, from the bridge down to 126 South, there are no streetlights. So this, it's not only a landscaping and putting in the trail, but it's also a street light and safety issue. So that's the background of the project. So we opened the bids with the knowledge that all of our bids lately have been pretty high, right? So this is kind of a summary, so I'm just gonna go over it real quick. So that top line, budget available, about $850,000 is about the budget that was available. And let me take a step back. So there's bid alternate 2, which is it's not pictured in this map, but it's just some ADA ramp, curb ramp work that's not actually located right at this location. So it's really minimal. As you can see in the bid, it's only $6,000, but that's where bid alternate 2 comes in. So this is where the low bid came in for the base bid price. This is where it came in for bid alternate 1. So if I go back, this section is bid alternate 1. And then that piece that I've just mentioned is about $6,000 is some curb ramp work. So the total price for the whole project is about $973,000. Going back to what's available currently in our current budget, it's about $850,000. So this is why we knew the prices may come in big. We kind of set up the bid the way we did, where right now we could, without making any adjustments to the budget, we could go in and complete this whole section, the base bid. But we couldn't, without making a budget adjustment, do this section on top of that. So that's where we're at, is, okay, how do we want to move forward with this project? So again, base bid and alternative 2, under budget. Base bid plus bid alternate 1 and 2, over budget. So what we have kind of come to the meeting with is a direction to move forward. And we have some ideas on how we could make it work. Option 2 is this option of doing everything. So, like I said, this is in the current fiscal year budget. But we know this project, since the bid opening was just yesterday, will likely, construction will span over into the next fiscal year. And so at that point, we will need to move some budget over to the next fiscal year anyways. And so one of our suggestions to be able, if the desire is to complete the project, go with option 2, is we wouldn't necessarily need a full budget opening. We just add that into the next year's fiscal budget to the project. So I guess our question is, should we move forward with option 1 and just not worry about adding in the bid alternate 1? Or should we work towards a direction to do the whole project? So, and one last thing I forgot to mention, you can imagine if we build this and then this gets developed, you'll just have a pocket of weed, kind of similar to the complaints we had on Juniper Crest, but it's surrounded by improvements in this case, so. Yeah, that's,
And Bryce, I'm assuming if we were to not do bid alternate 1 now and come back, it's gonna be more expensive
it's gonna be
To
much,
be-
yes.
to do a separate project down the road.
Yeah,
It won't be-
one,
it'll be a
inflation,
standalone.
we know prices just keep going up, but 2, yeah, scale of economy, right? You're already paying for all of this, so mobilization and all those costs go down when it's just an add-on as opposed to just
So
a standalone project.
or probably more than 2 questions, but the 850 we have in our budget, is that the fee in lieu we've already received for this, or is it
No.
on top, there's more other money?
That's the amount we budgeted for it. The fee and lieu is probably closer to 200,000.
Less than
Yeah,
that, okay.
yeah, quite a bit less.
Yeah, and so we got the stick on that one. Second is, are we doing landscaping to the natural habitat? We're doing xeriscape
Yes, yeah,
and
so-
no grass, no.
Exactly, so this would be kind of one of our prime examples if it was completed of water efficient design and installation for Haram City. We are obviously requiring that of our residents and our developers. And so this meets those standards.
Since this is an obligated thing we have to do, we're not eligible to get funds for it, is that correct? Or,
So we have been working in the background to get some grant money through the Water Conservancy District. They do give some funds to projects like this. We're still looking into the possibility of receiving those funds now that we have an ordinance that requires it on all projects.
okay,
But from what we're hearing, there may be about 50,000
yeah, that's the
available
max, yeah, per phase, yeah.
in a grant for that.
Alright, last one is, I know that garden plot's probably gonna be developed here soon, but is it potential that we could do a connectability route like we've done here, just east of here, or west of here, where we have a small asphalt pavement to connect the actual sidewalk to sidewalk? Or it's a temporary thing until that's completed?
That's a good question. I don't know where we stand on property, if we have a full right of way. Blake, do you know if we,
I looked that up, but yeah, if there's a right of way issue.
yeah.
Cause I mean, I know
First.
it's a waste of money for the small little asphalt trail, but
Right, could
it
we,
may
could
be
we,
beneficial
yeah,
for a year
get
until they
this
get that in.
connected is what you're
Correct,
saying.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question. I do not know the answer on if we have the right of way enough to do that. We may have it. I'm not sure. If we don't, then we'd have to get an easement from the property owners and then,
But are we throwing money away if we do that temporarily?
possibly.
Possibly, but I wonder if it could be tied into this bid as a winning bid if they, I mean, it's not significantly that much more. They have the equipment on site. I don't see it being a lot of work. But it's just an option.
Our standard is you go 2% from the back of walk to the back of curb, sloping out to the road. So it should be easy to hit the grades. That would be my biggest concern, is if you miss the grade and then they'd have to remove a whole bunch, you'd actually be putting more cost on them, on the developer.
On the developer in the long run. Okay, I see.
Yeah, and yeah, so that, and to Mayor's point, we would require the developer to install that when they came.
Yeah.
Is it, if we go in and install it, that's our cost now, right?
Yep, correct.
And so we wouldn't be getting the trail put in by the developer, we would be going in on our own cost to do that, is the.
I was
but,
wondering about
yeah.
timeline. I mean, if it's a year or 2 or 3 years to be developed, I'm assuming it's gonna be quicker than that, but
Yeah, your guess is probably as good as mine. But, so, yeah, going back to option 1 is just base bid and bid all
And I
to
think all we're looking for tonight is
direction.
how do you want us to bring, do you want us to bring forward something with the budget amendment or just bring it within the budget? Staff report, you consider, you'll have all sorts of questions, you can ask them next week, we're just trying to figure out, do you want us to go through the effort?
I'm sitting at option 2. I mean, I know we probably should have forced the developer to put it in when they came in, but that's too bad, right?
I think feed and lose in
Yeah.
the word.
Yep.
It just means more money to the city.
At a later date and time. Yep, and
I understand why it happened when it did, but
agreed.
yeah, there's a huge cost for us. The part of my decision would be where the funds come from, if it's general fund or park impact. The government impact part of the decision too, right? If it was park impact fees, I'd probably be more inclined to just say, do the budget amendment now and let's go. If it's general fund fees, I'd probably like to spread that over 2 budgets.
So if you're interested in, so it sounds, at least 2 of you are interested in us trying to put something together and showing you what those options are
Yeah,
for your
It's a complete
consideration.
project, yeah.
Okay.
that's,
Yes,
We'll
and-
push
I
it
think
down.
it's, in the long run, it's way cheaper for us to do the complete project.
yeah, do it now. I will say we've kind of pitched this into the next fiscal year budget, so Alan's gonna present on that tonight. That was with the idea of going with option 2. So it is already programmed into the fiscal year, or the next fiscal year budget. If we approve that budget, we could move forward with option 2. If we don't wanna do that, and we wanna go with
Just take
option
it
1,
out.
yeah, we'd take that out.
So the entire project is in next year's budget or just the
No,
122?
yeah, so we've tried to divide it up because like I was saying, our construction will probably span 2 years. And so we've divided the construction cost,
2 fiscal. 2 fiscal.
yeah, 2 fiscal
It'll be-
years, sorry,
understood,
2
okay.
fiscal years, so,
Otherwise, it's gonna be one of the longest running.
yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
2 fiscal years, so when we add that for next year's budget, it doesn't require a budget opening then to program in that extra hundred and
That's kind of what I
twenty-two.
would anticipate.
Yeah.
And so that's, unless we hear otherwise, that's the direction we'll keep moving.
Oh, Wendy doesn't stop me over that comment.
She will. She's listening.
Okay, so it sounds like we're good on that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, thanks, good presentation.
Other future agenda items. I will mention, we've talked about, and I run this by all you guys, I would like to see on the general meeting, the diversity inclusion advisory board, as we've talked. We've talked kind of offline, just have that presented just in the, and I can finish up the, kind of a pretty, kind of a basic committee to get started
On the 27th?
on the 27th.
Yep, perfect.
Okay, any other future agenda items?
Based on that, oh, never mind, you commented, I think we'll have to wait on that, never mind, thinking out loud.
Okay, move on 1.3, council discussion of future citizen recognitions. I know tonight I've just got one tonight, I think we just got, you don't have anybody tonight.
I don't have anybody tonight, but I know that I'll probably have some next on the 27th to present, and then we'll go into the May meeting.
I would like to recognize, I'm gonna reach out to them middle school.
Mhm.
We met a gentleman that he volunteers every day at Fort Harriman Middle School, volunteers every day. Just volunteers in their coding class, kind of their electronics class. He's donated equipment. He's a Harriman resident. He's a former engineer, electronics guy. He just spends every day at Fort Harriman, just
Yeah, that's
no
awesome.
recognition, so I think I'm gonna reach out to him and I would like to have him here in 2 weeks, so.
That's good.
But Addie Brewer, you have Addie Brewer, Ari's daughter. Technically a South Jordan resident, but runs for Harriman High, watching All-American, just amazing runner, so. Just let us know if you've got any, just kind of give us a week notice if you could on any recognition. I love this, by the way, I think it's being talked about, it's, every time we've done it, I love it. Okay, move on to item 2.1, discussion regarding the observation of Juneteenth, Freedom Day. Travis.
I appreciate it. I'm gonna stand over here just a little bit, I think. The intent of this conversation really is just to get some of your ideas, some of your feedback, and if you wanna provide direction, that's fantastic. Or if we wanna look at some more options on top of this as well. So the reason this is coming up right now is last year, President Biden approved Juneteenth, which is the anticipation that the Emancipation Proclamation was approved and put into effect, ending slavery in the United States. And in recognition of that, President Biden approved Juneteenth as a federal holiday on June 17th of 2021. Now, in conjunction with that, Governor Cox recently approved Juneteenth as a state holiday just a couple weeks ago on March 24th. And how other places are observing that and how maybe we want to look at observing this holiday as well in conjunction with a federal holiday and a state holiday.
And I would say it was unanimous, the state legislature passed
It
this
was.
unanimously.
So we're kind of thinking, well, what is everybody else doing to an extent? We know the federal government's doing, we know the state government's doing, so we reached out to local cities, said, well, what's the anticipation here? What are you proposing and what's going before councils? So quite a few cities, so 35 local cities responded back to my email request on this, and 19 of them said, we are gonna observe Juneteenth as a city holiday. And a large majority of those cities that responded have said, we're just gonna add this as a holiday into our employee benefits section. So rather than trading anything out or rather than looking at adjusting anything, we're just gonna add it on there in conjunction, right, with federal and state holidays. So those cities, the local ones for sure, Murray, South Jordan, Lehigh, West Valley, Midvale, Orem, South Salt Lake, and just recently this week, it sounds like Draper has also adopted this Juneteenth as one of their city holidays. So there are a couple outliers of cities that are not observing Juneteenth that have said, at least for now, that they're not looking at adding this to their benefits package or to their observance package. There's only 2 out of 35 of the cities that said, we're just not observing Juneteenth right now. There are a lot of cities kind of in our current position that are taking some things to city council and trying to decide what are they gonna do with Juneteenth, and so 14 out of 35 of the respondents are currently in discussions. So when I pulled this, it was Cottonwood Heights, Eagle Mountain, Sandy, Saratoga Springs, and West Shore. Now they didn't want to give me any direction on which way they are leaning necessarily one way or the other, but I think we're starting to see a large majority of cities who are just adding this to their observed holiday package. So I wanted to get your thoughts on that, on where you think the city should be at. And a couple of things to take into consideration, right? How are the residents gonna view whether we approve this or not? Do they wanna see City Hall open during June 19th? I think that's something we need to take into consideration. On the other hand, with residents, are we in alignment with where their values and their beliefs are in observance of this holiday as well? Another thing to take into consideration is businesses coming into Harriman City, and they wanna align themselves with us. Are we in alignment with their culture and their values and the things that they're gonna wanna see the city support them in as well? So I think there's a lot of reasons to do it or not to do it, and then it's just a matter of what we wanna do here at Harriman City.
My take, and I talked to Nathan about this, just so you guys know, we talked to Nathan. Nathan's thoughts are this year, we got that email about, so there's some few things scheduled. We are technically kick off town days that day this year. We've got events scheduled that day. Nathan's thoughts were to move forward with the city holiday, but start next year. Give us a year to start. That way we're kind of ramping up for it. I think as far as our employees, personally, I think besides for me being the right thing to do, I think we're trying to be competitive with our employees, that we might be losing other cities, I think. I think you've got 19 that it might, that's another benefit that they're adding to. I think we just fall in line with the state, so I'm in favor of it, but next, I would like to see it starting next year personally. That's where I'm at.
I'm in the same boat. I'm actually very excited that this is a national holiday. I spent many years in my youth in Biloxi, Mississippi, and served a mission in Houston, Texas. And Juneteenth was a kind of a big deal. Really cool festivals, great music, awesome food, just a really fun celebratory day. And I think that for what it's celebrating, it's awesome. It's a great thing for our country to be remembering that and the significance it has to the rest of the world. That's not really relevant to the question you're asking, but as far as logistically how we adopt it, yeah, I think that's the right thing to do. It happened pretty quickly, you know, in March of this year. The calendar was already set. We're already ready to go. We've already got other plans. We've had some residents who have made some other plans, and that would interrupt some pretty significant things. I think there's probably a way around that if we really wanted to do it this year, but with the conflict with town days and anything else, I think the mayor's suggestion is right on. So I would support that as well.
I agree with all the statements. I think it's a great holiday, but the observance of how we recognize it is probably what we have to figure out. I agree. I think we make this year an exception of where we recognize the holiday, but we put it in implementation, employee and packages and all, and observance for next year due to the constraints and all the pre-planning. We probably should have saw it forthcoming as you know, the governor, but it's hard to tell what they're gonna do, so.
I appreciate that, to be honest. I think employees are gonna be completely fine with that from the employee side, right? It's hard to speak for maybe the residents and the businesses that are out there necessarily, but I think that's very fair from the employee side and where we're at time frame wise. So I appreciate that feedback for sure.
Not to go backwards, but maybe we could add that to a future agenda item. I'd like to hear some suggestions of some things we might be able to do to observe it in the city.
We might even try to observe it some way this year, even if it's not.
Yeah, exactly. It's not a, you know, a paid holiday or something like that. I'd still think.
And it falls on
It's worthy
Sunday,
of
but we'll observe it that
Monday,
Monday,
the 20th,
and then
yeah.
next year it is on a Monday,
Yeah.
and so.
So what's
I don't
interesting,
understand why we're celebrating on the 20th when the 13th is a Monday, and it could have been that day too.
Yeah, yeah.
in the state package and what they approved, it's actually, if it falls on Monday, it's gonna be on that Monday, but if it falls on Tuesday through Sunday, it's gonna be observed on the following Monday. So it's always gonna be on a Monday. How they wrote it was pretty interesting, but it's always gonna be on that Monday.
It's always gonna be on that first, well.
It's always gonna be on a Monday.
Monday.
Pretty much the following Monday,
Around
Monday
the
or the
10th.
following Monday.
So it's gonna be the third week of,
It almost might
Well,
always
pretty
fall
much, yes.
on, it's
Something like
mostly
that.
gonna fall during town days, so
It's almost always
so we could
gonna be
almost push town days, shorten it, or we could
that could
use
be our
this
kickoff
diversity
day.
committee and have the diversity committee do a
They do
Juneteenth
something on that.
celebration,
Yeah,
you know, just like
it,
this.
I think it could be, it's really cool.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
Appreciate it, Travis, thank you. Okay, move to item 2.2, discussion of amendments to city code proposed by Haram Traffic Committee.
Alright, I'm back up. So you'll see there's two ordinances that we'll be discussing today. Both were discussed in our Harriman Traffic Committee and some proposals to amend those, the city code has kind of come up. So this is a discussion based on what was discussed in those meetings, also some feedback that we're getting around. This specific one, so this first one, will still need to go to planning commission after we discuss it for a recommendation, and then we would come back again to finalize it. The second one is, does not need to go to planning commission, so this is a land use kind of application, and so that's why it would go to planning commission after we discuss it, and then come back here. So the second one will not need to do that, but I'll get to that on the second one. And then we also have some extra representatives from HPD to help answer some questions that may come up in the second topic is there's some enforcement kind of questions with it, so.
Wonder why all those guys are here.
I know.
So this first one, it has to do with our clear view triangle is what we call it, or visual obstruction ordinance. So we have an existing ordinance that looks a little bit like this, that essentially says, hey, you cannot put up anything over 3 feet in a certain designated area by the city because you'll be blocking the view at an intersection. So this really applies to landscaping and fences for property owners, but for commercial businesses, it might be signs. It's essentially clearing an area so that vehicles coming to an intersection, when they stop, they can see down the road one way and see down the road the other way. So this is how it currently would look. It is currently kind of considered in our ordinance. So it's a 30 by 30 leg triangle, and it goes off of what it talks about as roadway lines. And so fencing, landscaping, all is outlawed. That's over 3 feet in this area. So this is the existing ordinance, and there's a lot to it, so we kind of just took the snippet that we're kind of talking about and really looking at. So this clear view triangle, and the red part's really kind of what we are looking at and trying to consider. And so I'll just kind of read from that. So this triangle area is formed by the street property lines and a line connecting them at points 30 feet from the intersection of the street lines, except for public safety signs and equipment. So going back, this is what it looks like if you interpret roadway lines. Could be interpreted many different ways. So in some cases, there's no sidewalk, right? And so roadway lines might end up being the back of curb, or there may be no curb. It may be an area where we haven't finished it. So like Haram Highway, for example, or 6000 West, where so the lines are a little bit blurry right now. So that's one of the issues we have. The other issue is the way it's described is just interior to the property line. But usually the issue we have is not actually here. It's someone placing a tree right in the park strip right here, right? And so in general application, we try to extend this line to carry all the way through to the park strip, because this is usually the biggest issue we have. Someone comes to this stop sign, tries to see cars coming, sorry, Mike, hit you in the head there, coming this way, and so they're stopped here and they're looking down the road and there's a tree or oftentimes a parked vehicle that blocks the view. So this isn't considering parked vehicles, this is just considering landscaping and fencing. And so for our proposal is to kind of address those issues. So one, what is roadway lines? We don't actually say property line, we say roadway line. So what does that mean? And then, like I talked about, the applicable area of this clear view triangle is a little bit ambiguous as well. And then the third issue that we're trying to address is that this is a one-size-fits-all clear view triangle. So we want to, and the way that in most cases, for most cities and in our kind of concept of sight distance at an intersection, you need more sight distance at a faster road, right? So say you're coming here and this road is 50 miles an hour and you're trying to turn left there. You need to see a little bit farther down the road for, in that case, to make that left turn, rather than if this road is 25 miles an hour, you may only need to see here. And so therefore, the clear view triangle is kind of a one size fits all right now, and that was the other issue we were trying to address. So with those issues in mind, we tried to propose some modifications that would allow us to get rid of those issues we're seeing. So the first one is, instead of saying by the street property lines, again, vague, we say by the edge of asphalt. So that answers actually two of our issues. So if you go back to that image, we would actually be drawing the lines at the edge of the asphalt. It also answers the question if, like Haram Highway 6000 West, where we don't have sidewalk, curb, and gutter, where does that line actually, where is it drawn at? So it clarifies both of those things. Oh, and the other thing is that now you're drawing the triangle like this, so it does include the park strip. So that's by the edge of the asphalt. And then the distance I'm sorry, I'm flipping back a lot to this picture. We changed the distance to 60 feet because if you look at this now, the point of intersection is clear out here. So 60 feet gets you about the same distance. It's just measured from a different point. So that's where the 60 feet comes in. And then at the kind of end here, we propose this addition as well, where all intersecting roads have a right-of-way width less than 65 feet. And the intent of that is any roads that essentially have a speed limit 25. The Clearview leg distance may be reduced to 50 feet. So it allows a less enforcement area for slower speed roads. But it has to be every leg of the intersection, like we talked about. If this is over 65 feet of right of way, that means it's a minor collector or major collector or an arterial, which means higher speeds essentially. So we did consider just putting the speed limit in the words or in the wording here, but this often applies to developments and new roads. And so sometimes those speed limits aren't established yet. And the development side of things, they understand what the road would be designated as and the right-of-way width. So that's why we're saying, that's why we're using right-of-way width instead of a speed limit number. So yeah, with that, I guess we love kind of any feedback or thoughts you have before we go to planning commission and come back on this topic.
In here, there's talk about, the tree canopy has to be higher than a certain height, is that correct?
Yes, so right now you can't have the tree in the Clearview triangle, but say it reaches in, so like this, again, imagine this
Right.
extends here. So it can't be, the trunk can't be in it, but if it reaches over into the Clearview triangle, we do allow that as long as it's high enough that it doesn't block the view as you're looking.
Do we have
Looking
that
down the
defined in feet?
Yeah,
The tree canopy center.
Yeah.
And really what
7 feet,
that's for is like garbage trucks and
Yeah.
street sweepers and things.
Just out of curiosity, I wanna make sure, does that 7 feet extend onto, the canopy extend onto the sidewalk side too?
Yes.
It's all around.
We probably need some work on that.
We need some tree trimming.
Holy cow.
We've been out doing a bunch.
Well, today you didn't have to because the snow took care of it. Is that enough sightline on most roads, chief? The 30 feet from property?
and to kind of go to that question, every road's different. So this is ideal intersection, 90-degree angles.
Yeah.
In curves, it does get a little bit different to be able to see around the curve.
Is there a matrix for that, or is there?
There is.
Okay.
There is actually a formula that we have as engineers through ASHTO is the organization. They make a roadway design guide book. And there is a formula to calculate it based on the speed of the road that you're making the maneuver. Unfortunately, we've seen when we've tried to give that to developers and property owners, they're not gonna go in and do the calculations for every situation. So that's why I say we don't want a one size fits all, but we do want an easy way residents and developments can come in and say, okay, that's the Clearview triangle for my yard. But you're right, there is a specific calculation that we could look at in every case. And in a lot of cases with our major arterials, we'll go in and look at that and say, okay, that tree, although it's not in our Clearview triangle, will need to go still.
So we're really not changing much, we're just making it,
Clear.
we're clarifying.
Yes,
We're
that-
trying to,
the
cause it doesn't
intent-
extend that 30-foot triangle.
Yeah,
We're just-
exactly. So this is where it's measured from, is you kind of draw a projection off of the property lines and where it meets, we go 30 feet off. So now what we're discussing is, okay, let's make that triangle off of the edge of asphalt here. And since you're measuring from here, it's about double the distance to actually get to that same area.
That's right, so.
Pythagorean theorem. Is there enforcement
You almost
or,
said it right.
Wow.
I know, a modification or enforcement of current situations?
So in general, and then maybe this is more for a case for Chase, if we made the change, I imagine those that were already kind of under the old ordinance, we would not pursue enforcement on those.
Legal non-compliant.
So this would be moving forward.
No, this isn't really a well, it is in our land use code, but the enforcement of it, I say you could pursue under a safety exception to that.
Yeah, if it creates a safety issue, we would have to do it, and I think that's part of why we're looking at this, is that it's not clear, and those trees do extend. There are a few, Chief and I, up there, all of a sudden you're there and the tree is right in front of the stop sign, even as you're on that street, so there's those kinds of things we need to enforce. So this isn't like the legal non-conforming use, this would be.
It's in Title 10, but really that's probably not where it belongs, right? It's more of an engineering development standard.
I was just using fancy words that I had heard before. I have no idea.
Same to me.
You were right, you did a good job with that.
And I will say, we will look at this if we get a complaint at a certain area, but the most application are new development applications, right? And we have the plans and we can measure it out and tell them, hey, get out of our clear view on your landscaping plan.
Or any new fence permits or whatever comes in.
Yes,
yeah.
exactly.
Okay, I'm good.
Yeah.
Sherry had some concerns, but
Where the
she just
answer?
said she's against it.
Oh, wait, I
What was
was,
That was, I think,
She
on
said
six,
next, can I tell her? Can I read those?
6-5-4.
She can't vote, but.
I mean, there's no voting tonight, I'm just saying she's
Her
opposed to it.
concern was actually 6,
More on the next one.
which is the next
the
section.
next section.
She says she's against 202 and 23, but 23 she's very specific, but we'll get into that. Yeah, that's a good question, so.
Yeah, so the next ordinance, this is a little bit why we have HPD here is, this is more of an enforcement issue. So, we also have an existing city ordinance with traffic obstruction. So similar idea, but this isn't necessarily at intersections. This is the intent of, well, the way I interpret the intent of the ordinance is to prevent obstruction into travel lanes. And so the existing ordinance does have that intent, but it seems when it comes down to enforcement, it lacks the teeth or the definition that we need to be able to clear roads if people are parked into a travel lane. So this is the existing ordinance. No person shall stand, stop, or park any vehicle upon a street or highway in such a manner or under such conditions as to leave available less than 10 feet of the width of the street or the highway for free movement of vehicular traffic. So that sounds good, right? Hey, if you're leaving 10 feet, it's probably not an issue. The problem we have, I guess I'll show the problem we have. So this is an example on Miller Crossing, is this example. But as was discussed a little bit at the beginning of this meeting, or before the meeting, Butterfield Parkway is the same striping, same layout, and we've had this issue as well. So it's not necessarily just Miller Crossing. This is where we're seeing it the most, but it's any minor collector road's gonna have this striping where it's only a 3-foot shoulder. And so there isn't enough room to, in most cases, fit a vehicle in that area. So in this case, so you can see it happens on both sides of the road. You can kind of see this is a little bit more up close of kind of an issue that we have that, okay, they're not blocking the entire lane. So therefore, there's 10 feet available for someone to come around that car. But the issue is when you have them on both sides and then someone's coming the other direction to pass. So in this scenario, this car's actually not poked out too far, but imagine you have this truck there that's 2 or 3, 4 feet over the line, and then you have it also on this side. And then you have 2 vehicles traveling in this lane, traveling this lane. All of a sudden, this car has to merge into the center turn lane, which is not for traveling, it's for turns, right? And then same with this vehicle. So now you've kind of got an oncoming conflict right there. And I will say this isn't about intersections, but intersections complicate this even more. And on Miller Crossing, for example, there's a lot of intersections along this road. So if someone's trying to turn left, so someone's already sitting here at a third green car, and they're waiting to turn left, it just adds a whole nother dimension of conflicts of vehicles. So this is where the idea comes in. Do we want to clarify that obstruction of a travel lane means crossing that white line? Essentially, your vehicle's in the travel lane, you're blocking a travel lane. This would, in our discussions, we feel like this would clarify the ordinance, but it would also be easily enforceable. Whereas right now, we've had some issues of being able to enforce this where it's thrown out because, yeah, you have vehicles parked on both sides. There's probably 20 feet here, right? There may be 15 feet here. And so therefore, they're not necessarily breaking the ordinance in that case, or violating the ordinance, right? So this is Miller Crossing. We have some other minor collector roads that would have this exact issue if we ever build new. This issue will probably be a continual issue unless we address it, or if we decide that it's not an issue, I guess. So that's what we proposed, that we define that a lane of travel is something that's been designated by roadway striping or markings. And then we just get rid of unless you have 10 feet available. And then, this is another kind of topic, most of our minor collectors will end up having a bike lane here. And so you can probably imagine the issue of a bicycle trying to get in and out of all of these shoulders. And so we added it kind of to the bottom that they should not obstruct the entire width of a bike lane. So essentially not filling this whole space with a parked vehicle.
So it's gonna be no parking,
Yeah.
essentially. What was
Yeah.
the purpose of the 3-foot lane there, shoulder?
So.
Or is it just striping?
So, let me take a step back. So we have designations for our roads in our master plan. So there's local roads, those are the ones with no striping, no markings on the road, residential roads essentially. Minor collector is the step up from that, where we're having kind of a collection of these local roads all come to one road. So I wish I had a map up of Miller Crossing. But essentially, you've got all these neighborhoods that come, and there's one, Emmeline is an example of this. Emmeline, again, Butterfield Parkway is an example of this. 7300 West is an example of this. So those are all minor collector roads. They're not quite as beefy as our major collector, which then extends this shoulder out to 8 or 9 feet, where people can easily park in and out of that shoulder. Rosecrest Road,
yeah.
exactly. Rosecrest Road is a really good example of that. So minor collectors, you need less space, right? There's less vehicles traveling than a major collector, but there's enough space with this shoulder to install bike lanes. So we could have a multi-mode traveling on this without conflicts, right? The cyclists can get in this bike lane, the vehicles can travel in this lane. If a vehicle needs to turn, they can get out of the way, turn left at an intersection while these vehicles keep going and you have a bike lane for cyclists to keep going. So that's kind of the intent behind the smaller shoulder, is that we don't necessarily need a full right turn lane in these cases. On our major roads, you usually have major intersections which need those dedicated right turn lanes.
Creature of habits, though. Like, if they parked there for the last 2-3 years.
We can educate, we can do
I
something.
know, yeah.
So Councilor
15
Orrin had sent that text, and she's opposed to this change simply in it unfairly penalizes neighborhoods that have been developed with street-facing homes. Expecting them to never have people park on the street seems unreasonable.
But that's
So,
not gonna be local,
7300
right, though?
Well, these have
Yeah.
a bunch of street-facing homes. Emmeline has a ton of street-facing homes.
Every house on
7300 has a bunch of street, cause Emmeline set aside 7300, we're gonna designate it a minor collector, but it was some local road at some point.
Yeah, and I will say, moving forward, our standard is not to allow any driveways on a minor collector. So new minor collectors should never have driveways extending onto the road.
So these aren't driveways, these are just their front
Yeah,
doors,
this is
cause
front
these are all
door.
rear loaded.
So these are all townhomes, and this is generally what we see. 7300 West, maybe not the case. But because these residents have 3 cars, but their garage can only fit 2 cars,
Their driveways.
they,
5 feet long.
yeah, they anticipate parking in the road for their 3rd car.
Yeah.
Right, but the issue we have with that is when winter comes, they need to find a space off of the road for our plows to
Trash
come
cans
through.
and plows.
It's already illegal to park in the road when it's snowing. So the argument is, hey, I bought this house with the anticipation to have 3 parking spots. One of them was gonna be on the road, and you guys are changing that. So that is a concern that we're hearing.
Was that in an agreement, the 3 spots or 3 availability spots, or how did that work? I mean,
No,
They don't get to count.
they don't get a count, yeah.
yeah, in our ordinance, we do not count on street, even in the major collector on like Rosecrest, where you have the room, it's not allowed to count as off-street parking or parking spaces for
It
development.
sounded like Chancellorman Orange's concern though was
No.
people having, friends or visitors.
Yeah, people
Well,
coming
Emmeline,
over
for
and-
sure, you got tons of, I mean,
Jackie,
it looks like there's a bike lane on that one though.
It's
Yes,
Jack and
Emmeline's
Starbucks.
a little unique
Wendy said
where,
it's hot.
where you have bike lanes and no center turn lane. That was done a while ago
Yeah.
based on resident feedback, I think, to
Is
try and
that-
slow down speeds on the road.
Emmeline was a special case. There was,
What's the parking
It's a
strip
weird
there?
road.
Is it a 3 foot or 5 foot, and then the bike lane's the 2 or 3
I
foot?
think it's about 3 feet, so there's 3 feet of asphalt as a shoulder, then I think a 4-foot bike lane on each side, and then the rest is unstriped.
I mean, cause measuring wise, you still have 26 feet between 2 parked vehicles, roughly 8 feet each. I don't know if it's a restriping thing, or if it's what that looks like.
Harriman Rose Boulevard, we did do some different stuff over here where we pushed it into no center turn lane except for where the intersections were. Kinda like we did on the U road here. And it allowed for more parking, or we pushed it to one side or the other. And so you can get creative with it, it's just a striping.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the issue is, we do want that center turn lane, so, at intersections, or we want a left turn lane, we've known.
But that
it is-
also help if people not park in that observance zone or that clear view zone,
Yes,
if the turn lane opened up.
Yes, if a turn lane opened up, but for example, on Miller Crossing, there is an intersection.
Every so often.
Yeah, quite a bit, and so by the time you open up and close the parking, there is no parking. And it is a little bit intensive to do that in every case. If we have a minor collector standard striping, it's easy to install and to enforce and to be consistent throughout the city. But if that's a discussion point of maybe we look at that.
In that area you have right there, there are 2 cars directly parked across from
Yeah,
each
right
other
there,
right there. And that's
Yeah, so.
That's a safety issue there. I mean,
Well, you
that's pretty wide though.
You have 26 feet though, roughly, cause you're about 42 from kind of what I measured off Google. I don't know what the actual road width is.
Yeah, off the top of my
Asphalt.
head, I'm not sure.
Yeah,
curve,
the
yeah.
asphalt, I kind of went from, I went from stripe to stripe, so,
About
you-
40 feet.
yeah, about 40 feet, yeah. So you count 8 feet for each car, you know, you're 32, 26 feet, you still have 26 feet. And you're dividing 2 cars in that, which is still pretty,
24 feet.
Pretty generous.
yeah, still pretty generous.
It's Google Earth measurement. So
Yeah.
it's somewhere in the middle there.
So best case, you have 24 feet. People park off the curb a little bit here. It
Yeah.
it
You
gets
still get
constricted.
10-foot lanes going both directions. Now, if you're stopped in the middle of traffic turning, or you have a semi or delivery truck or snow plow or garbage truck, yeah. This isn't an easy one.
Yeah, and feel free, I kind of excluded HPD, but if you guys have any input or thoughts on it, feel free to jump in as well.
I think it's different too. Miller Crossing to me is different than 7300. That's what they're probably.
Yeah,
It's
the-
different than
the one thing
Emmeline too,
about-
yeah.
Miller Crossing is in where I see the issue is that there are people that are making left and right hand turns out of all of these side roads all day long, right? I mean, all the time. And so if you have 2 like where the white car is on Miller Crossing,
That's-
let's say there was another car just, you know, I guess to the west of it on Miller Crossing, closer to the intersection there. Then you have 2 cars across from each other intersection. If you have 1 car waiting to turn right or left, you can see where now a car may not be able to get by because somebody's in the middle trying to turn and.
That is happening.
Yeah.
And that's where the safety issue comes in. That it's a huge trade-off in the convenience of people being able to park in front of their house.
One on Miller, I've seen them where they, they park all the way to the edge to Main Street.
Yeah, corner to corner,
Yeah.
On- Right on the stop sign, which I know is illegal, I mean, that's against code, but still they do it they run out of, that'll be full at night.
Yep.
That whole thing, that road is full at
It
the end
is.
of the day. Both sides, all the way to the
So
stop
if we
sign.
change this, you have to realize that's
Or one side
hundreds
parking.
of cars that are
Yeah.
gonna be, have to be moved. I mean, it's a,
But to his point, they
major
have to move
disruption.
during the snow anyway, so.
But they don't. They plow around them right now, right? If they get to the streets and plow.
So HPD's been pretty good about giving warning stickers and you guys can step in for the first time around. And if they come back and those cars haven't moved, that's when they escalate enforcement.
How many times does the snowplow get twice through Miller
I
Crossing?
mean, that's snow removal, but
Yeah.
during the non-snow season, the only way to enforce that is signage. So right now, under the ordinance, it's legal to park there, as long as we're not having snow. So once we get May through the rest of the summer, they can park on both sides of the road because they've got that 10-foot.
Under our current ordinance.
So what's HPD's take on this? Would you like to see this?
I mean, I think that's up to you guys to make that decision. We're just-
I know this is your first meeting, BA. I know this is your first meeting.
I would say this is really a public policy decision, right? There's some safety, but more it's public policy. If we change the sight lines with the corners, does that alleviate some of the concerns we're talking about where people are trying to turn, cause you're moving cars farther back?
So as far as the clear view,
It's a huge education piece,
unfortunately,
though.
that does not extend into the road. It is just interior. So like this section, we do have an ordinance that we passed a year and a half ago to when we updated all of our kind of enforcement that vehicles can't park within 30 feet of an intersection. So we do have that as a separate ordinance.
Well, then I think that's your answer then. If that's
But they're still parking in
ordinance-
that 60-foot triangle though.
But if then, but I'm saying our concern is the turning lanes, but if they're already supposed to be back 30 feet, that's the
Well,
ordinance we need to be enforcing and
But
not-
those cars are 30 feet. Easy.
The one
The one on the
The
top
white
right
one
one
is, but
isn't.
the one on the top isn't.
Yeah, the one on top isn't.
Yeah.
So I think that's our, I mean.
So I would say that, to your point, if there's no cars within 30 feet of the intersection, that would tend to make it more passable for somebody turning and still have cars passing, it alleviates, for the most part, what my safety concern.
But then you throw bike and pedestrian and other uses in
True,
there.
that's it.
I mean, you've got bikes weaving in and out in traffic lanes of traffic anyways now.
So Counselor Shields, do you remember as we stood out on that street?
Yeah, I remember.
So math, right? If it should have been big enough for two cars to park on each side and for two cars to easily pass.
Not one car couldn't get through.
Right, because the math didn't work out as easily as when you stood there. Cars were parked off of the curb. There was a mailbox there. Somebody came up on I don't remember what he had. There was a big mess in the middle of the street, and as we sat there, we thought, well, by math, this should work, and it just simply didn't. And that wasn't adding in a fire truck or an MRAP or whatever else we're doing in the state of an emergency.
Right.
But, our streets in that area especially just could not hold the width of the vehicles that were passing. So that's your safety concern, right? And mirrors and trailers and all these other.
And that, I don't even know, is that a minor collector road? I guess that main road was, right?
Yes.
That we were parked on?
16.
Yeah, sorry.
There is.
These developments were never.
Yeah, so
And we live in a weird community.
I hate the idea that we're creating this inconvenience for all of these residents, right? I really dislike that. But if it's a trade-off between inconvenience versus a safety issue, I think we have a responsibility to really be considerate of the safety issue.
I
That's
don't think it's
not
gonna
popular
be a one
necessarily,
size
but-
fits all though either, right? Cause
That's
Emmeline's
my
different than Midas and different than 73 and different than
Yeah.
other roads. I think it's, we're gonna
But
have to,
Emmeline has a 6-foot,
with a bike lane though.
It's a 66-foot wide right of
Yeah.
way. It was just
Yes.
striped differently because houses front it, and so there was a lot of resident concern when it was built. it was striped with 3 lanes, and they wanted it to feel like a small neighborhood road, so they
Right.
put center double lane. So it's
Yeah.
a weird one.
But Blake, at night, you don't see many cars on that road. So each road is much, much different.
Yeah, but they
On
have
other
long
roads-
driveways, right?
Right.
So they, yeah.
But in this road, you'll see cars parked bumper to bumper, right? And while cars are a good thing for engineers to say it slows down traffic, for the police, it causes great concern to people with kids.
Can you
walking
pull up
out.
7300 West too? I wanna see what that looks like.
Say, one thing we're talking about is restricting parking on both sides, and frankly, that may not make sense,
No,
right? You may only
Go
have to be
one
on one side, but,
but then you disadvantage the ones that have the facing.
well, you
sides,
decide which side you're gonna allow parking on, but I think your challenge is,
We ought to even add
you're gonna
this.
make several hundred people upset, so just.
Well, and I think the challenge is people are still gonna park on the road.
Agreed, it's, yeah.
I think it's gonna be an enforcement nightmare, because I guarantee you, if you have a party at your house and you live on 7300 West, people are gonna come over and park on the road, they're not gonna know it's a public street is how they're gonna look at it.
I lived in an odd and even neighborhood and it actually worked fairly well.
Yeah,
It wasn't terrible. If you had an odd address, that's where everybody parked. You have neighbors parking in front of your house,
Yeah.
which upset some of my neighbors, but there was still room and we had a clear path on one side.
And that's a temporary parking issue, right? A party or something, an event.
right,
But these streets are, like they said, it's full. After 5, 6 o'clock at night, those streets are full.
yeah, and or if you're in a neighborhood, like, the reason I brought it up is just cause I drive down that street and I'm like, some of these people have a bunch of teenagers and everybody doesn't fit in the driveway, you know what I mean? So you have a couple of your kids that park out front because that's in front of their house. I don't know.
73
No, the difference is though, like on a
Well, it's
residential
really
street,
funky.
It's striped a little bit funny, so the center turn lane is there, but the outside shoulder lanes are not painted, so.
For a couple hundred feet, but when you get further down 7300, then the striping is completely
Yeah.
different.
Yes,
I don't know.
I've only driven down a couple times.
Yeah, so in this case, actually, the ordinance wouldn't allow enforcement on 7300 West because there's not a shoulder line that people would be crossing when they park. So like a white shoulder line. That, even on the north section, there isn't.
There is on the north section,
Yeah, scroll up, Jonathan, if you can.
cause everybody has called me to complain about it, cause they can't put their
So,
garbage cans out.
keep going up a little bit more north.
All the way to the
Oh,
stop sign.
this is an old aerial. it
Yeah.
looks like.
Oh, you gotta
So
back
you can't,
out.
but it's just got the center turn lane,
Yeah,
the
I
yellow.
saw that, yeah.
But as you
yellow.
go down, it doesn't, it has the white stripes on the sides, cause everyone complains about it.
There's no white stripes there.
As of August 28th, 2021.
Oh, maybe it's just because you pushed this over, and so that if they put their garbage can out,
The
people,
cars are.
the cars are, okay,
Yeah,
that's
the
it.
couple houses on the
It's
corners.
the same width
Yeah.
as Miller Crossing, it
Okay,
just
you're
doesn't
right,
have
I'm
those outside lines.
Well, you have that center braking one where the right and left turn
Yeah,
on
yeah,
that north end. Yeah.
so that's a problem.
yeah.
Seems like I'm the only houses that front are on the north side.
No, there's some south, isn't that?
Just,
frontage?
just right at the
Right
very
there, yeah.
beginning, but the rest of them are on this side, so
Yeah,
if
so-
you're gonna pick side, or you
I
could
picked the north side for sure.
say
yeah.
north side, or you could say south here and north there.
Anyway, I don't know what the
I just
right
don't think you
answer is.
restrict parking on both sides unless you,
Maybe you just
decided
restrict
to have
parking
people
on
walk
that
up.
one south side, yeah.
I just always think it will be an enforcement nightmare, I think people will.
What if you put a dedicated bike lane on that south side on Miller Crossing? And then that fits the ordinance, they can't block the bike
So
lane.
the current ordinance doesn't actually have anything for a bike lane, but with this new ordinance, that was part of the intent was you can't block an entire bike lane. So that may be a consideration that we do part of it and
You
not
do
all
a parking
of
on the north side and then
Right.
bike lane south
Bike
side.
lane, so it's that way you allow for some on-street
So-
parking, but you have a way to enforce.
Force the
create
bike
more
lane side.
Did a
The
similar thing
the
in
only-
front of
Compromise.
Hall Elementary, if you look up there.
Did
Yeah.
they?
The striping shifted so we can
Okay.
allow parking for all the volunteers at the school on the south side of the road. The
Yeah.
north side just had a bike lane.
Yeah, and the issue
Oh,
with
that's good.
just one side of a bike lane is generally they're one directional. So a minimum bike lane should be 4 feet or 3.5 feet. Because that's about the width, 3 feet is about the width of handlebars, right?
Yeah.
So we wouldn't have room to do so that's why you usually have bike lanes on both sides. So if someone's coming this way, they're on this side in the bike lane.
They
If they're
go with
coming
traffic,
this
yeah.
way, they're going that way on the bike lane on this side of the road. So with 4 feet, you couldn't have a
Do it right.
bi-directional bike
But I
lane.
think I'm okay with that, as long as it fits normal, like, it probably doesn't fit normal standards though.
Well, bicycles allowed to ride in regular traffic though.
They can, yeah.
We typically like to only share lanes if it's 25 miles per hour or lower.
What is this for
Yeah.
This
What
one's
is
I think 30.
30, yeah.
Well, let's decrease the speed limit.
Yeah, it's kind of something has to give somewhere, right? If restricting parking on both sides of the street seems like
Probably not gonna work.
it works, but it's kind of the most,
That's like the
the highest
sledgehammer,
action,
yeah.
right? It's the sledgehammer. Maybe we can be a little more surgical and find a way to say, because of the safety concern, we're eliminating parking on one side of the street. We use the bike lane as a means to give us the enforcement thing. You can't block the bike lane.
Did this stem from complaints on safety issues
Yeah,
or
so-
residents or?
A little background is Miller Crossing, you have both sides, right, complaining. The ones that drive it every day are saying, why are we allowing people to park into the travel lanes? And then the people that live right on the road are saying, I've parked here since I bought the house. I had this in mind. You can't take this away because I have 3 cars and I only have room for 2 cars in my garage. And so that's, yeah, we're getting both sides. Both sides are complaining. So I will agree that no matter what you do, someone's gonna be upset.
Which is fine, I mean, that's the game, that's the name of the game, but it's,
Part
how
of the
do,
job.
yeah, how do we,
You talked about pushing it down so you had a center turn lane only in certain areas, but there's a lot of intersections. Looking at the connectivity, there may be a way to go through and put some medians to make some right-in, right-outs and elongate those parking areas and then allow left-hand turns at like every other major
it would slow
intersection.
traffic down though too. I
Sounds
mean,
really
for-
expensive too.
Yeah.
It would be really expensive.
And you would have a lot of pushback from residents that are used to turning left out of their neighborhood now have to
And
go.
what is the traffic flow increase on traffic studies once we get the auto mall and the other stuff off of Main Street coming through?
Yeah, so that's a good point. Right now, Miller Crossing dead ends at Main Street, but one day it
We'll
will
go through.
Yeah,
can continue through and hook into Mountain View. It won't be a full intersection, it'll be a right in, right out, similar to some of the intersections that
And then
Maryland.
everybody's going down that road.
Left and right.
Yeah,
and
so
They
everything.
won't
that's-
come out to Haram Main Street, or they won't go up to
they'll-
118th anymore. They'll just go
They'll
straight
run through
out
there to the
Yeah.
middle school, run to their 7-Eleven, all those other ones, yeah.
And that's why it's designated as a minor collector, a step up above the local roads, is because traffic projections warrant the need for that third center turn.
Speed bumps.
I think we've gotta do something.
Bryce, do you remember how much pushback we got? And maybe Blake can answer this from 134. When we had all those cars parked on 134, we told them they couldn't park there anymore. And they went away.
Yeah,
Did we
Yeah.
get much?
I didn't hear much,
Off
but
of 134th?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's tons of Trolley Street traffic there, yeah.
There was.
At first I had a lot of
Did you?
feedback, but it went away pretty quickly.
How do you enforce that? Just A-frame signs out there, notification?
We started out with pamphlets, then we went, I think we did. do it.
we have signs all along there that say.
But we
no parking
walked it.
in
We
right
met with the HOA.
And that was caused
People are
because
gonna-
of the bike lanes that we put in.
It was.
Yeah. And that, well, you're still seeing traffic down that Jimmy John's or whatever that street is now. And that's,
That one gets pretty
Yeah,
tough.
what is
yeah.
To the west of it, yeah, that's really tight in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is a lot of traffic on there. I'm trying to remember what the name of that
And then
street.
it,
5200 west.
Just
I mean, and this is the
Yeah,
discussion about the minor collector roads, right? And they're a little wider and there's a little more forgiveness, but then you get into the neighborhoods and people recognize there's huge safety concerns. I mean, you saw it firsthand, right? It just gets,
It's all minor.
just gets way worse, so.
Neighbors and local.
Not-
Yeah, but if they're not striped, it's hard to, I mean,
Maybe with this
you
would
can't
apply.
enforce,
Yeah,
yeah.
That's what I'm saying
This
is-
would not apply.
is
in
the-
those cases.
where the way we're striping it that leaves that
8-foot,
even if it's only 3 or 4 feet, it's in kind of inviting
Yep.
people to park there, right? Whereas if you put the bike lane, it kind of narrows that a little
Yeah,
bit and
I-
it shrinks that space down and.
I would, and it is our standard moving forward, whenever a minor collector is installed, the bike lanes go right in with it. It's the perfect space, right? These were established a little bit longer ago where the bike lanes weren't established from the beginning. We could look at installing those and then yeah, we can put up signs, or we can update the ordinance to just say you can't obstruct the entire width of bike lane.
But that's inside the bike lane, right?
Do we wanna spend some time thinking about this and come back?
Bike lane.
I don't wanna belabor this too much tonight.
I do like how 5200 striped though, where it's 300 feet back from the intersection, it narrows it down. They do have the 8-foot parking, or the strips there, no bike lane.
52 West, that's the
Yeah,
street we're
that's
talking
Jimmy
about.
John's,
That's
yeah.
right.
Jimmy John's in the,
Oh, yeah, where it has the line that comes out.
Yeah,
from-
little zig,
Yeah, where
yeah.
it narrows down
Yeah.
100 feet before the corner, yeah.
It was when we went back and restriped, when that was first built, it was
awful.
It was
yeah.
striped, like
Straight,
everything else
yeah.
is with the center turn lane.
Yeah. And you can see that, but
Bryce actually redesigned that.
good job, Bryce.
So, yeah, so again, in this case, it's nice because you just have one intersection on that whole road. So, but on Miller Crossing, you have an intersection almost, well,
I know.
every block
Right.
essentially. And so by the time you curve out to make a parking space,
You're
you're
curving
already
back in,
curving
yeah.
back in.
The 134 isn't a minor collector,
No,
No,
that's an
yeah,
arterial.
that's an arterial.
It's arterial.
Well, this
So
is
that
that
makes-
off-street, but
That
even,
makes so more sense not to have parking on there, that's.
See how it like.
That's very
Yeah,
nice.
that
Yeah.
street.
Those minor collectors, it's like, I don't know, because when 7300 gets done in the next budget, it's gonna be
a minor collector.
it's gonna be this problem. And so it might be that you park on one side of the street, put a bike on the other or something, it's just, you have so many homes that front and have been there forever, that it's hard to come in and say
But they have
sorry.
long driveways too, so yeah.
Some of these we didn't
Bless
require
you.
long enough drive.
But then there's still, I know some people who've run their piano school or, you know what I
Or
mean?
daycare,
And so you have parking on the street sometimes. And I just don't wanna have a parking enforced with Billy there all the time.
So the struggle we have is that because of the ambiguity in the current code, enforcement of this is already a significant challenge.
I bet.
And so while
Even if there is a
Nathan's
safety
right-
concern, you can't enforce anything.
Right, so this is clearly a policy decision and we'll certainly enforce whatever direction you guys choose to go. The reason that we wanna bring it to you is to maybe get some clarification in the code to allow for a more simple enforcement, particularly in light of our minor collectors starting to gather more traffic as we
Sure.
develop.
I agree 100%. I just don't know what.
I'd
the
like
right
to see a
decision is.
proposal, a way that we can restrict parking to only one side of the street.
but it's not gonna be one size fits all, we're gonna have to identify certain streets, right? And then moving forward, we get that standard.
I mean, there's a way to get creative. We've gotten creative with striping before, where if we were to enact something similar to what Bryce has proposed here, we adjust the striping in the road so that it allows for an 8-foot shoulder on one side
Yeah.
and no shoulder essentially on the other, and we kind of move the lanes away off of the center line. There are creative ways to do that with the way that the language is proposed.
Yeah.
It's not typical, but it's doable. Like BA said, really our only enforcement mechanism right now is signage, which is what we ended up having to do on Butterfield Parkway, which is now littered with no parking signs.
Which also, yeah, is not
Not
good.
attractive. It's tricky
not
to
good.
put that into code because if you try to do a one size fits all code, we can't be very flexible with our design. So
With
like
the
73 is so much
engineering
different than Emmeline. We're gonna build more roads like that.
And Butterfield,
Even
right,
Mountain
yeah.
or South Hills Boulevard, we start building those, you need to have the flexibility if we're locked down by code, so.
Yeah, if you come in and do this in Emmeline, you gotta go in and restripe.
It's gonna be an expensive change.
Well,
Do you want to think about it and come back?
Yeah, I mean, I think we try to chip seal them first or re-slurry them and then paint, but.
It also seems like when we've done this, we'll need to be careful that we don't have parks without parking,
When
that
are
we
they
are now
scheduled?
restricting parking away from, cause that'll just. So I'm thinking more of some of our drainages
pocket
that
parks
also
and
serve
drainages.
as
Okay.
parking spaces. So,
Like where 5400 dead ends.
Yep.
There's right up there.
yeah, it's just one of those unintended things I think we really need to think about, because they may not be
They're technically.
parks, but they're using them as
Yeah,
parks.
that's-
Where are they supposed to park?
Where he's.
And there's a couple places that are
Yeah.
very specific, like in my neighborhood, there's some tennis courts. Everyone parks right along the
Yeah.
fog line, just like that.
Yeah.
Just down the street, a couple blocks, is a basketball court, there's no parking there, so that creates the same problem at those places where you need to be able to accommodate parking there during the daytime to use those facilities.
We just need to think through some of that unintended consequences.
We fix one problem.
Yeah, we create some other problems.
Well, I would say this, maybe I would challenge council to drive around and try to get some ideas, maybe try to spend some time driving through these areas and try to come back in another month
Yeah,
or so.
so like I said, Miller Crossing is a good example, 73 Entered West, Emma Line,
Mirabella.
yeah,
Mirabella,
Mirabella.
another one.
Those are some good examples just to drive around and get a feel for it.
One, just going back to the previous ordinance that we talked about, I think the first intersection to look at would be the corner of Mount Ogden Peak Drive and Layla Lane. Holy cow.
Yeah,
There's stop signs north-south and not east-west.
Okay.
So Layla has through, but Mount Ogden Peak has stop signs that
Oh,
are
I saw
visible.
that.
Yeah, that's a good point, we can look at that.
Scared the crap out of me the other day.
Okay, well, sorry, we don't have more direction for you tonight.
No, you're good.
Not an easy solution. Okay, well, we'll discuss when to bring it back then.
Okay.
Appreciate it, Bryce. Okay, item 2.4, discussion regarding the proposed vacation of a horse trail easement in Hamilton Farm. Blake, you taking this?
Yep, this one may sound familiar to some of you, might be new to a couple of you. So this is a horse trail easement that was created, well, first here's the location. It's just one block, I guess, east of 6400 West or Rose Canyon Road. And the subdivision's called Hamilton Farms. Here's the plat for that subdivision. So the resident, this is in response to a public comment we got, I think last city council meeting or two city council meetings ago. Last year, I think it was in November, we actually brought this to the council and there was a recommendation to vacate it, but as the council analyzed the issue and discussed it, it was decided to not vacate it and not honor the residents' request at that time. So the horse trail, it's an easement, it's not right of way, it goes behind lots. So 6400 West, if you're looking at this map, I think north is to the left. So
That
6400
road's run there on the left, yeah.
Yeah, this is, Rose Canyon Road. So this trail comes off the sidewalk, comes over and ties back into sidewalk over here. There's some history with it. The Hamilton family that this was all dedicated way back in the day. They only put sidewalk on the west side of 6400 West and did not put sidewalk on the east side. And so somehow this trail was part of that discussion, getting horses up and down. This was done in 2002, so this is when Harriman was still very heavily equestrian centric. And so, as we did the research, it doesn't look like this trail was required while we were going through the planning commission, like pre-process. So it looks like it was included as a requirement of planning commission, and then the developer put it in the plans and put it as an easement and left it at that. And it got put in, and there was no maintenance responsibility set forth when they created this or anything. It was just, there's a trail, and then they constructed it, and it's gone on ever since. So you can see on the two maps here, there's the yellow line is the trail, and you can see in 2005, a lot less density, a lot less housing going on back then, and things have started to fill in, so the trail does not appear to be used heavily right now, but it's still dedicated as an easement for public use, it's there. And so the resident requested that the council now revisit this, so we're presenting it, asking you if you want us to pursue this and bring it back to you with the recommendation.
There's a process, public hearing and noticing and posting of this trail that we have to go through again.
Like, if I could jump in, this, I, you know, cause Kenny reached out to me, Kenny Alton reached out to me as well as and actually, full disclosure, that actually goes across the road too, the yellow.
It ties into
It
the
ties
main
in,
horse
so
trail.
they're also looking to vacate that.
Except that one ties into one of our major trails.
One of our paved.
They haven't been looking to vacate the one across the street, at least in what was.
Oh, he
originally
does, yeah,
proposed.
they do, they absolutely do.
So-
That's Polson's,
So
right?
there were
Polson, yes,
two
that's
approaches.
Polson.
Polson came first, council denied it, then Alton came, council again denied it. They're asking if you wish to reconsider it, There is a policy process to go through. Staff recommended, or we were not opposed to closing the Alton one because it really doesn't go anywhere. The other one, it does connect from that neighborhood onto our major trail system. It does feel like that's a purposeful trail.
But this one also has connectivity through there.
It does connect from the sidewalk there to here behind the homes. There's no sidewalk along 64th.
Correct.
So if you were to come
Does-
down.
Does it connect through further east?
No.
Yes, across the street.
Yeah,
Yeah.
further east,
Down at the bottom.
down.
Oh,
Next
down
to
here?
Polson.
So see,
Yeah,
that's
Right there,
important to know
that's
that.
the Polson piece right there.
Right,
But-
but I think it's important to note that it is all has connectivity. It doesn't just
Yeah.
dead end at that street. It
Yeah, but
does
let me ask you a question, doesn't it also connect up off of, what is that?
Rose Run.
This one
right there,
does,
right
yeah.
there. No, south, you're almost.
It's just a
done.
road right there,
It's
it's
a
just a
road.
road.
Right there.
That's Rose Run, yeah, it
Yeah.
connects there, yeah.
It's a sidewalk, so.
So that would tie right into the trail as well, there, right?
On the north end.
And that's what's
south.
being used, I mean, I went out there and walked, that's why I brought this, I recommended Kenny to bring this back, cause I went and walked it with him, like, I went and walked this, it's not, there's no access from the back on any of those properties, nobody's using it to access onto that trail to come around. It's 10 foot, the parks don't, I mean, it becomes a hassle for parks, they get called every year, cause it's not on the, technically, in the,
We're not maintaining it.
yeah, we're not maintaining it, they get those
But
weeds in
we
there.
agreed to maintain it in our
We
last.
maintain it, we're not maintaining it to the standard they're requesting.
Right, but it is on our list to
Yes.
maintain.
And again,
Have we done anything since we approved or maintained the easement?
That was in
Because it's
November, so.
winter.
haven't really had that time yet.
We
They're just
did
starting.
post no vehicles and those kind of
And there are
things.
golf carts running it now, so that's the issue now, they're seeing golf carts.
Next up.
And to me, this is a, Go ahead.
Remind me, is the trail that's adjacent to the Polsons, is it dedicated different? Is it an easement or is it right away?
It's all easement.
we own that one.
No, the main
west-
trail.
on the
Oh,
east
the
side,
main
on
trail
the east side.
is,
The one,
it's city
the
property,
one south of Polson.
the one south, it's on the same flat. It's right.
So
Yeah.
is-
It's an easement,
That's
that's
an
an
easement
easement as
that's the
well.
note right there, it's the same note, so it's a 10 foot.
So it would be the same.
See, my problem is if I had an easement on my property, this is personal, if I had an easement on my property and it wasn't being used and I've got 10 foot of my property that's not necessarily being maintained to standard, I want my property back.
And so did, almost, I
They,
think it was almost
90% of
unanimous.
these, yeah.
On that side, what about on the west side?
And there's one horse that uses it now, and they said they walk down the street, they go up that little side, up the road to that main equestrian trail. That's the only horse being used in the neighborhood right
And
now.
then even on the Paulson side, 3 houses down connects you to Triple Crown Lane. So you'd have to walk 3 extra houses if that closed. Yeah.
And that Polson one truly is the bigger issue, cause it's open, he's more open, cause it's a side yard. He gets weeds in, both the neighbors.
And he's
get
got
the
2
weeds.
fences to maintain.
Yep, 2 fences to maintain, so he's, the ones that both on, like Kenny is on the corner, Kenny Alton's on the corner. He told me it's almost 4,000 square feet of his property that he
He's
doesn't have
paying
access
taxes
to.
on.
That he's paying taxes on. It's not city owned, it's an easement that he pays taxes on.
I think the question is, yes, I wanna look at it again with fresh eyes.
I'd love I know I've been talking to a lot of people about ag, I wanna protect our ag, but if it's a city owned and a certain dedicated trail that the city owns and will maintain, I'll protect that all day long, but this is private property that's not being used anymore, it's an expense to the city, that's where I'm at, so that's where I'm at, I wanna bring it back, cause I'm in favor of the vacation.
Do you want us to include this
I would like
entire
to.
piece in closing this one off as well?
What is there an application from the,
They're asking you to reconsider, so we will have to go back through the entire process.
I would say I would reconsider what their request is, and then we can make the decision from there. Cause I'm not gonna say yes or no on part A, part B, phase 1, phase 2 thing.
I think just our request is direction, and if we got the clear direction from the 3 council members, we can send the notices out and hold the public hearing, which would be in a couple of council meetings. And
Sure.
after that, we could have it on for decision or come back 2 weeks later for decision.
And I thought about your point about future owners, cause that was your point to me, that they may not be using it now, but future owners. But again, I went back to the private property, we talk about private property, like
On the west and the east?
the west end.
I think this affects the people on 64, is it 64? Yeah, I think that affects them more than the actual development, that's the private property.
They both can use it, right?
Yeah, they both can use it, but it's not on their property, on that west side of the road, it's behind their property.
Right.
So,
But they have access to it.
they have
this
access
season.
to it, yeah.
I don't know, my vote would be, I don't wanna listen to it again. I felt like we did our due diligence in November, but it's 3 council members, you guys wanna listen to it again, awesome.
Yeah, I'm supportive of hearing again, I was the only vote in favor of vacating it, so.
Okay.
Same place, yeah.
And I would just tell, I changed my mind when I went and walked it. I would just tell everybody to go walk it, and I think that gives you a better understanding of really what you're,
I've
You know.
rode on it before. So. I have
Long time.
friends that live just across the street right there.
go write it again for you so they can say there's more horses coming.
Just walk up
Okay.
and down it every day.
I'll bring it
Okay,
back, thank you.
appreciate it. Okay, I'm trying to hurry. Do we wanna get into 5? Is it gonna be, do you wanna get into golf carts really fast?
So really,
Should be
well,
quick.
you guys can have the conversation, do you want us to bring you something or not? If you don't take any action, it just status quo is they're not allowed.
So as a golf cart owner that's been on plenty of city streets,
Then you have to recruit.
yeah, I would recuse myself on it, but I honestly think from the state and looking over who has golf cart permissibility on roads, it's very, very few. Like, it's not really, I mean, it's an issue more than it's a permitted item, so.
Let me ask, I have a question about the definition of the word golf cart, versus electric
side-by-side,
vehicle,
Electric vehicle.
right? Like, if you have an electric side-by-side.
Yeah.
If you have a Tesla,
I mean, golf
I
cart
mean-
could be gas as well.
and they can be gas too, right? Is how do we distinguish what is a golf cart and, you know, and how do you, like, if it has headlights and turn signals, is that the requirement? Is it
An OHV vehicle or is it
Yeah.
golf
Street
carts
street
or
legal?
street legal?
That's
It's
the biggest
defined.
question to me
It's
above
defined in
anything else.
statute.
It's
I'm
defined.
pulling it up right now.
That was one
It's
of their
defined in
add-ins, was the
statute.
It's defined.
So I really don't know what I would be trying to be saying yes or no to.
Can you street legal a golf cart?
Yes.
So, and those are fine to drive, as long as they're street legal? Or are they banned in our city?
Well, they just, so at the time of the statute, got defined as a vehicle, but for certain use. And it was not allowed unless you all
Choose to
it.
allow it.
Yeah, so state law, the default is it's illegal, unless the city says that it's not. And then state law says that if the city makes it permitted or permissible use on roadways, you can define where, who can operate them, what requirements they need to have. Kind of go from there to make safety requirements for
So
those uses and on what roads.
would that, 100% illegal right now, but would it be a better enforcement tool to identify the legability of them? Or does that complicate things? Like if we say it has to have X, Y, Z, turn signals,
Trying
rearview
to
mirror.
separate in my mind little kids sliding off of seats and falling
Yeah,
out. Because there's
and-
enough accidents by adults on golf courses.
Exactly, yeah.
Including me, that on the street, and I can tell you since 2020 to current, right? That we have had nearly 20 calls on something to do with a golf cart. Almost all of those except 2 had to do with juveniles, 12 and under.
Yeah.
One was 12, 7, and 8. 2 of them had to do with adults doing dumb things in them, donuts in a park.
Mine hasn't left the private property. They're supposed to go on grass.
And a good portion of them had to do with our trails and people being shoot off of the trail as they go by, so again, an enforcement piece, right? But that's the key piece of this, and they are crash worthy, like cars that are designed to be on streets. But neither are UTVs, to an extent, they do have a rollover requirement. But we operate those, at least those have seatbelts, you stay inside, and they're governed as a vehicle. These aren't. And there's very few things that keep you in them. About 15 to 18,000 incidents across the United States, most of them in Florida, happen with accidents, by the way. The villages down in Florida have a big problem. Thankfully, very few of those result in death, though the ones that do are typically from the canopy hitting people in the head and the rollover. So that's what I know about it.
I think if it's, if it has seatbelt, if it's operated by somebody with a license and it has turn signals and stuff, absolutely, there's a vehicle.
So the struggle that you have with that is that the statute defines what a golf course, a golf cart is.
What
And
how
then
does
in
it
that
define
same
it?
statute, it also says that golf carts are exempt from all those provisions that you just described.
Yeah,
So-
so you don't have to have
It
it.
feels like
There are
if
no
it's-
licensing requirements, there's no emissions requirements, there's no safety inspection requirements, the statute specifically calls all those out. So
And another
you
thing
can't
that we have
enact an
to-
ordinance that would require that.
We talked about it, is insurance required?
No, they're
And
exempt
when you
from motor
have
vehicle insurance.
Other people in the vehicle and it gets hurt, and they get hurt, they're without insurance, it's,
See,
it's a
it
mess.
seems like if the state default is to disallow them, then we should have a reason
to allow.
of why it's really
Yeah.
important for our type of community to have that. So if you were in like a strictly kind of retirement community, I don't know how to classify that.
Like St.
I'll get in
George, when they
trouble.
do that.
But you know,
build
if there was
communities
some
around
sort of
subdivisions.
community around a golf cart, then I could see that, but
Scottsdale has one.
maybe it doesn't
We're
seem
not
like a
there.
good fit
I
here.
don't think
Florida, California do those around like the PGA courses, Arizona.
Yeah, I can see
But
that.
for a reason, right? Those
Yeah.
houses also have, their third car garage
Is
is
a golf.
a golf cart garage.
Yeah,
and
so that
it's
makes
just
sense
big
to me that, but if we're gonna do something that's kind of different than what kind of the state law is asking us to do, which I assume a lot of law enforcement officers are involved in those
Yeah.
kind of decisions, then to me, it seems like we should have to have a really compelling reason, other than people like to start driving.
I'll tell you, what made me nervous during public comment was he said, I'd like to throw my kids in it and let them go.
The 10, 12,
And I
14-year-olds.
thought,
Yeah.
And that,
I mean,
that
they
is
mow
one
lawns
thing,
and do service work and stuff, but it's,
that's one thing you can regulate. So if you did choose to enact an ordinance, you can,
Age.
regulate what streets they can be driven on, who can operate it, and the times of day that they can be operated.
But as
Those
the
are three
council's
things
pointed
you're
out, does that
allowed
make
to-
it harder for us
yeah,
to be pulling people over and deciphering that than just say if one's on the street, it's illegal?
yeah.
I
Yeah,
don't think we're there yet.
Yeah.
So,
I don't, I'm not interested in it.
I'm not either.
Now that all my ideas get shot down,
anyway,
yeah, I'm not on board.
which city allowed it? I think there was one or two.
There's two, and it's, they're tiny cities.
Pleasant
Which
Hill
makes
or
sense.
some-
Yeah,
You know, just-
but they're rural cities that's like more of like a utility vehicle
Yeah.
getting around rather than an actual.
I would have thought St. George, maybe.
Nope,
Yeah,
St.
my
George is
mom
not on
uses
it.
hers all
Yeah.
the time on her property.
But if you're in an HOA,
have to.
Communities
Yeah, they-
where they're.
yeah, St. George, you can be in an HOA
Right,
and
and that's the
yeah.
thing is,
Drive to the mailbox.
this is
Okay,
only on roads.
so there we go.
I can.
In an HOA.
Motion to temporarily adjourn the, work meeting to go to city council's general meeting.
Motion by Steve,
Second.
second by Debbie, all in favor?
Aye.
Alright, hey, wait, look at that,
Oh,
that's my yesterday.
we got your grandbabies?
Oh,
Those
goodness
grandbabies?
gracious.
Two little twin boys.
Oh.
Cute.
You know what?